We're about 2 minutes out. Hey, Papa. Fantastic.
Bob, I was trying to make you moderator and I moved to. Oh my God. I'm sorry. There you have. Now you have the control over me if you want to move me to the audience as well. Good morning, Andy.
Morning.
How are you?
Uh, I'm doing
Cold.
well. I had an
Seems
8 hour
cold.
sleep. Yeah, I built a snowman. I had about 8 hours of sleep. Oh my goodness.
That is so great.
It's hard to wake up sometimes when it's that long.
Yes. Lee's getting ready. We are here. I mean, we are going to start soon, so please get ready.
Andy's last name is Joy. What a great
Ah, that
last
is so
name.
beautiful. Nice.
No, it's not.
No.
It's not my last name.
Why not? What's your middle name?
No, I mean, it's not That's even all my right. name. It's my
Oh,
mother's
okay.
get it. Name. Yeah,
Oh,
well, it's my mother's name and then I named my daughter that, and I just said, man, I'm part of all that.
Yes, of
Somewhere
course.
in You are.
You
That's between.
are
that's totally
entitled
close
to
enough.
wear it.
Yeah,
Not
you
entitled.
definitely are entitled to wear it. That is absolutely can be your name, just as much as lovely could be mine. That's right. Thank you.
well, I have a question for Tom. Lesson 30 says, God
Go
is
ahead.
in everything I see. Legally getting to this, of course, because God is in my mind. Well, I want to know, is God in my mind or am I in God's mind? So maybe we go from lesson 30 to 365 somehow during the process, and we see that we're all one.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is
Yes, brother.
January 30th. I'll give you a chance in just a second, Papa, but you can't see what
Mute.
I'm doing on my side, so you just got to bear with me.
Nah, just mute that guy.
God is in everything I see because God is in my mind. This is such a great progression from yesterday. So I
But
know
wasn't Tom going to speak? I mean, it's just
he,
that.
he was. I just needed to hit go in a whole bunch of places and say hello
Okay.
at the beginning of things, and
I'm sorry
now
to
we
interrupt
absolutely.
then.
It's all right. We can absolutely get back into the flow. Just trying to keep all three platforms in four platforms in unison. Enough. It's good. Um, we're off to the races. So, Dad, if you don't mind, I got a little bit of feedback and couldn't hear your whole question. Could you ask it one more time?
My question is, am I in the mind of God or is God? This says God is in my mind, and I expected that Tom in his notes will cover this query that I have, and that is that where am I? I'm in God's mind or God is in my mind is the question. And
The
I'm sure that you will
question,
have
the question, Bob, is really, is there a difference?
ah,
And where does that
It's
difference come from?
are you sure you're not Jewish? You know, Jewish people, they answer questions with another question. That's the old joke. So that's wonderful. Well, in terms of where we are and where we're going, this last night we now have discovered that Adriana will be going somewhere this weekend, and I'm going somewhere this weekend. Adriana is going to the United States this weekend, and I'm going to Liberia. And so we're going to be traveling. And I've been told, without my asking, that I will be able to transmit Course in Miracles from Liberia. So that should be very interesting. And that's all I have to say for now. Back to you, Lee. You're in charge.
Wow. Yes. Miracles abound. Juggling a lot of stuff. I'm sorry. I'm listening to Pop. I know you're asking me a question, buddy. I'm sorry. I will be able to talk with you in just a minute. All right. We're all doing lots of stuff. Hopefully we can just relax for a minute here. Let's read our little session. We'll be on the way. I'm going to turn the music down just a touch more. All right. Happy Sunday morning, everybody. It's lesson 30. I hope you all are staying warm. It's 9 degrees here. We got about 21 inches of snow, which is a lot of centimeters. I need to get better at doing my math conversions for centimeters and centigrade. I've been practicing. All right. Lesson 30. God is in everything I see because God is in my mind. The idea for today, that God is in everything I see because God is in my mind, is the springboard for vision. From this idea that God is in everything I see because God is in my mind, will the world open up before you, and you will look upon this world and see what you have never seen before, nor will what you saw before be even faintly visible to you. Today, we're trying to use a new kind of projection. We're not attempting to get rid of what we do not like by seeing what we do not like outside of our mind. Instead, we're trying to see the world. Instead, we're trying to see in the world what is in our minds. And we want to recognize what we want to recognize. What we want to recognize is there in our mind. Thus, we're trying to join with what we see rather than keeping what we see apart from us. Joining with what you see is the fundamental difference between vision and the way you see. Today's idea should be applied as often as possible throughout the day. Whenever you have a moment or so, repeat the idea that God is in everything I see because God is in my mind to yourself, slowly looking about you, trying to realize that the idea applies to everything you do see now or could see now if everything were within the range of your sight. Real vision is not limited to concepts such as near and far. To help you begin to get used to this idea, God's in everything I see because God's in my mind. Try to think of things beyond the present range as well as those you can actually see as you apply today's idea. Real vision is not only unlimited by space and distance, but real vision does not depend on the body's eyes at all. The mind is real vision's only source. To aid in helping you to become more accustomed to this idea that God is in everything I see because God is in my mind, Also devote several practice periods applying today's ideas with your eyes closed, using whatever thoughts or subjects come to mind, and looking within rather than without. Today's idea that God is in everything I see because God is in my mind applies equally to both what you see and your thoughts within your own mind. All right, that's the lesson from A Course in Miracles Workbook for Dummies. And I've got the notes from there too. And I'm going to jump in and read those. But if anybody wants to say anything or had anything come up with this, some reflection, I'd love to hear that too. So be quiet for a moment and then I'll read the next part.
There are a couple of footnotes in the Purple Book, and it says, in light of yesterday's lesson, what is in our minds that we are trying to see in the world is God's purpose. That purpose exists in our minds, and through this new kind of projection, usually called extension, we assign this purpose to all the objects that we see. The second footnote says, the subjects we use can include thoughts as well as imagined or remembered objects, as subsequent lessons make clear. For example, lesson 31, it looks like, yeah. Merely let whatever thoughts cross your mind come into your awareness, each to be considered for a moment and then replaced by the next. So those are two footnotes from the Purple Book. Now we're going to see Tom's notes as well. Back to you.
All right, no problem. Holy moly, welcome, Dave. Brand new account. Glad you're here. I'll just go over our quick room setup rules and information. This is where my checklist would have been more helpful, Papa. But we've been doing this since July 4th of this past summer. We're here every morning at about 6:30, usually more like 6:37. And we read through a couple of different versions of A Course in Miracles. There's a big blue book that we're all familiar with. That's put together by the Foundation for Inner Peace, and that's used as the basis for the Course in Miracles Workbook for Dummies. And there's a guy named Tom that added a ton of extra information to the Course in Miracles Workbook for Dummies. And the work that he did makes it a lot easier to kind of hear when I'm reading it. So I use his for the main reading. Dad's looking at the Purple Book, which is put together by a group called the Circle of Atonement. And that group puts together, pulled together a lot of the original source material that was edited out in the blue edition. And so we're getting information from a couple of different places and just trying to pull it together just to try and give you a fresh view on this lesson and break it down and make it really easy. So I'll read through the notes and then we're going to do the lesson together. We're going to set up our reminders and stuff just to try and help get the Course in Miracles a little bit more in bite-sized chunks so that we can all kind of get it a little bit deeper. This course is like a rose in that each of these petals that we pull away reveals more stuff. For some, at least at the beginning, it feels more like an onion peeling away layers of onion. But, you know, through a couple of tears, we all got our stuff figured out and worked on. Here are the notes. Again, if anybody has anything to say, jump in, but I'm just going to keep going. I swear, I'm not changing the volume of this music, but it really feels like it's getting louder and going softer on its own. The winds are still blowing really heavy here. Most of the blizzard is gone, but the snow looks like sand dunes because it's so light and fluffy and been blown away. It's really an amazing texture of snow that I rarely see. Only when it's super, super cold do we get fluffy snow like this. All right, God is in every one of those little snowflakes too, because God is in my mind. This lesson clearly states the idea that we've mentioned in most of our previous lessons. Your mind is the power source for vision and the world that you perceive. What you perceive to be your outer world is actually a reflection of your mind's inner state. Real vision is not limited by space, distance, or the body's eyes. The mind is the only source for true vision. This is why you are asked to devote several practice periods applying today's idea that God is in everything I see because God is in my mind. Do this with your eyes closed. If God's everywhere, as stated in Lesson 29 yesterday, God must be within your mind. We're all familiar with the idea of an inner guide, some inner voice within you that tells you what's right or wrong. It's a voice that holds you to a higher, nobler standard and represents your better half. Some might call it your conscience, others intuition, inner guide, the Holy Spirit, your higher self, a guardian angel, or the voice for God. Regardless of what you call it, that inner voice always seems to represent and know your true best interest. This inner voice guides, directs, and moves you towards a higher and nobler vision of who you really are. Whether or not we follow that inner guidance, we have all felt its presence. This inner voice represents a thought system that's based on a totally different belief system. It understands the big picture, knows the truth of who you really are. It recognizes that you are not a body, but rather spirit. It knows and can relate current events to the big picture. It seeks to join, not separate, you from another. It understands the interrelationship of all parts to the whole, and your role in that relationship. In this dimension of time and space, your inner guide utilizes a big picture thought system that's based on love and forgiveness. It knows that you are a spiritual being having a human experience. Its mission is to help you live in this fear-based world without being a source for that fear-based world, rather than argue for your ego's limitations. It calls for you to reclaim your spiritual magnificence. Just going to pause for a minute and highlight that. It's a great phrase, Tom. I have spent too much time arguing for my limitations, guys. The fundamental difference between seeing and vision is separation versus joining. Vision supports oneness and the interconnectedness of all. Seeing supports your ego's belief that it's a separate, autonomous entity in competition for the limited resources that your ego believes it needs to survive. The ego looks upon a fearful, unsupportive universe because it believes in a zero-sum game. If someone is to win, someone else must lose. Lack, struggle, and competition are at the foundation of the ego's world that arises from its fear-based thought system. And now for some reason my book shifts to serif type. I'm not sure if that means it's a difference. I think It's still part of the same here. This lesson also talks about a different type of projection. Psychologists often refer to our mind's ability to transfer its own negative thoughts from our own mind and see those negative thoughts reflected in our outside world. This is a coping mechanism that we use in order to live with our evil side, so to speak. Instead of seeing a negative trait within ourselves, our mind now sees that same trait in another. Since the trait is recognized by your mind to be outside of you, you're no longer responsible for it. You don't have to deal with correcting your own mind. You get to blame another and claim that it's not your fault. Oh, that shame, blame, and guilt game. ACIM states that by projecting or transferring your negative fear-based thinking from your egoic mind, you create your own fear-based world. You get to claim that you are an innocent victim of the world you created. Typically, projection is used. Now, this is actually a question here. Let me start it out so that you know it's a question. All right? Imagine an upside-down question mark. Typically, projection is used to transfer your negative fear-based thinking to the outside world. But what if you chose to transfer thoughts of love and appreciation from inside your mind and project them into your outer world? Would your world now reflect your new mindset and become a more peaceful, loving world? I think it would. Sure seems that way to me. That finishes the notes, everybody. And we're definitely to the point where we take a little bit of time to kind of discuss amongst ourselves how this hits us. And then we'll go through the lesson together. And I'll turn the music down and we can all talk. Welcome, everybody.
I just want to say this idea that my world is a reflection of me. If you can start approaching your world that way, especially since your world is a world of perception, that gives you a lot of insight into what's in your mind, but also it gives you tremendous power over your own ability to maintain your own inner peace. We can live, or I can live, in a world of seeming hate and fear and still yet live in a peaceful world because my world is a reflection of me. So a lot of times we try to we get involved in, get sucked into the drama that's outside of ourselves, that's being projected on a mass collective consciousness basis. But in reality, we all live in our own inner world. And so we have tremendous power over that. We don't always have control of all the circumstances and events that surround us, but we always have 100% control of how we choose to interact with those and how we choose to interpret those events. And we can see the world as either with love or with fear and realize and take, if the world is a reflection of me and we're putting that out into the more collective conscious basis, a question to ask ourselves, am I making withdrawals of and adding to a fear-based world with my thinking, or am I adding love and forgiveness with my thinking? Are we adding, if we looked at a bank and assume this is a bank, are we adding love to the bank, or are we fueling it with additional fears? Thank you.
Um, wow, this is a really great, of course, they're all great. It's a great revelation. I What I would have to say, I feel that I'm always following my inner guidance. Even if it looks like a hiccup, that's something that had to be understood to move forward. It had to be perceived without judgment first and foremost. It's my actual inner guidance, my navigator toward truth and therefore peace. Christ-mindedness is interested in peace. As it said, peace be with you and also with you. And I have nothing to worry about. I have nothing to do. This process is inevitable. I'm open. I think the only thing that I have to do really is just to be open to and aware of my perceptions in any given moment. But it seems to, like, I trust that process because it just unfolds for me. And the slower I move seems to be a much more controlled in understanding, without moving like impulsively like I've done for so many years and still have the habit of doing at times. Um, that's when usually it gets a little bit uh, out of control. And what I mean is it's still in control, but I'm able to see, and I don't get, there's no frustration in it because I actually become aware of it, but maybe a little bit later I could have pulled back. I'm not having a regret. I'm just
Yeah.
noticing. No,
No,
just
closer and
noticing.
closer. All you do is get a little bit better and a little bit better and recognize it a little bit earlier. It's like the
Yeah,
onion
so
or
that
the
I've judged.
rose. Hmm.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we're all getting better one step at a time. It's all, God, we've got to be more and more patient with ourselves. Slower. And I read a beautiful article this morning about a woman with a special condition. She's got a fourth cone in her eye, and it allows her to see a whole nother dimension of color that we can't see. And she's an art teacher, and this was a fascinating article. Men tend to uh, be more likely to be colorblind, which means they only have two cones instead. They can only see, let's say, 2 dimensions of color. Normal people see 3 dimensions of color, and this lady can basically see four dimensions of color. And
Wow.
when she
It's
describes nature, she describes going in a mall as being a horrible experience, and walking through the woods being a glorious experience. She can spend an hour looking at a leaf and see thousands of colors that the rest of us can't. And when she takes the time with her students, what she's found is that she needs to be more patient and help them see closer and look deeper and see around the edges of things to see how colors appear. And when she looks at browns, she sees greens and purples and yellows jumping out. And it was a fascinating thing to try and read. I spent a lot of my time talking about and thinking about color theory. My mom taught it when I was growing up. I have to deal with a positive color space, light color, versus subtractive color space, which is like paint, and describing that to people and helping them choose colors that are accurate within what they see on paper versus what they see when they look at a screen that's created with light. It's a whole different dimension of dealing with color. And so there's a whole different dimension that it would affect this woman in a totally different way than any of us see. I already adjust for colorblind people with accessibility, and this is a whole different way to deal with somebody that's got the opposite of a disability. It's kind of an amazing thing. So anyway, I wanted to
wow.
share that.
That's an amazing share. I can't really fathom it, but I'm open to fathoming it, which is, I guess, where I should be and just in it. But it does sound fascinating. It really does, and I never would have thought so deep about it.
I think fathom
This
is a
is
great word for that. That was perfect. And I love your snowman, Andy. I forgot to tell you, I really love your snowman. Good job.
this lead. What the story you just told is a perfect example of any relationship where one person begins to adapt to and adopt A Course in Miracles. They see a world, which is what we're talking about right now, that other people simply can't see. It's confusing to them. And of course, they think we're nuts,
Yeah,
right?
and then it even went into when you tell somebody about it, right?
Yeah.
Because then
Yeah.
it's like I can't fathom it, but I'm open to it. And then
That's right.
oh,
It's exactly right. We see things that other people, all they're looking at is with their eyes. And here we are at lesson 30, and it's becoming clearer to us that we've never really seen anything the way it really is. And that what we want to see, and this is these words I'm just saying right now are just coming out of all of these lessons we just went through. And all we did was practice saying the words. But we're beginning to see that there's a lot more to this world than we thought. And in another sense, there's a lot less to the world we see than we thought was there. And eventually, we're just going to give up that stuff, that junk, and we will see everything in the beauty of what A Course in Miracles shows us we can have. This woman that can see 4 dimensions of color is all out there on her own, trying to figure out how to communicate that with someone else when it was her normal way of seeing. And the way we are beginning to learn to see from now on is always going to be a little challenge here and there on how to help other people see what we are envisioning. And that takes time. We have to learn it, and then we try and explain it, and then we learn some more, then we try and explain it. And with any luck, the other people, they begin to see this is a very different world than they thought it was. So that story, Lee, is incredibly good for helping us see how this lesson 30 is so relevant to our minds. Great story.
you know what,
Thanks.
Bob, I just have to say the one thing, this one question. Does it really take time? Like time, like isn't it just it could be an instant in understanding something. I
Yep.
don't I think it's the will. I think it takes willingness.
Yes. Yes, it does. Willingness leads to one. All of them unfold, and every time I've done it, I've gained a little bit more and a little bit more. Get a little bit closer and a little bit closer. Good morning, David. Did you want to share something? And Michelle, down in the audience, I sent you an email with some tips and tricks to try and help. And anybody else who's interested, there's a raise your hand icon. It's down in the bottom right hand corner. If you'd like to come up from the bottom, tap that, and the moderator will bring you up.
I like to
If you'd like
share.
to share. Yeah, go ahead, David.
Well, Grand Rising, everybody. I've come to like this A Course in Miracles. Matter of fact, I just woke up and
Nice.
I don't know what happened. I just woke up and something said you need to go into Clubhouse, and I did.
George calls that the Jesus doorbell. That's fantastic.
Well, I love it because I didn't get in till around about 4 o'clock this morning, and I normally would just be asleep, but
Oh boy, oh
because I
boy.
guess my angels just woke me up, and I really find this very helpful, and I find it I guess essential because throughout the day I'm always thinking about these lessons now. So I didn't
It
get to
does
hear
kind
the lesson 30 yet, but um, I guess you can tell me where I can find it.
I will, and I want you to know, don't feel like you have to even go back. You really, what you can pick it up almost any time and go through it, and everybody needs it 2 or 3 times. This is my, I don't know, probably 7th or 8th, and I'm still getting brand new stuff every time. So don't feel like you're gonna miss a ton if you just kind of pick it up where you're at, because honestly, we're 30 days in, but the things that we've gone through are really just to try and get us used to the idea that we might not be seeing things as they really are. We might be coloring our reality with our own perspective, with our own view of the world. Our emotions and the way that our society works it forces our egos to have a whole bunch of overtones and decide a whole bunch of stuff based on what we think other people are thinking and what we think we're thinking and what we think they're thinking, and they're going to attack us if we do this, that, and the next thing. And it's about getting rid of a bunch of that BS and coming back to where God can guide you in a simple way with a deep breath and a return to the present now moment.
So for David, the workbook lesson itself is God is in everything I see because God is in my mind. That's what the lesson is, the explanations. Um, and you can always go back and hear this again because it's always been being recorded. So I wanted to add that to it. But the question that Andy brought up, or not a question so much, but the idea of time. Tom and I both talk about that a lot because the real question is, and on time, is is time the way it seems to us? We can look at our watch and it says, you know, whatever, 7:30 in the morning or something like that, 7 o'clock. Well, what does that mean? Well, someone in a different time zone, Adriana, for example, it's not 7 o'clock for her. So it's relative. It's based upon where you are in space. So it's relative to space and time. And then we find out eventually that it's really just a decision in our mind to to segment the world we see into before, during, and after. For me, time is just a big football field, and we are at some point a little tiny marble sitting on this big football field, and we decide to look at the football field from the 10-yard line, let's say. Well, I can go to the 40-yard line and see a different world. And time is a decision we make, and that as a group, all on Earth, for example, we all make a decision that right now it's if it's Greenwich Mean Time, we use that as the standard. Then that's it. But it changes wherever you are and wherever you're coming from, and so do our thoughts change because of where we are and where we are coming from, what we were taught. And what we were taught sometimes just has to be left in a garbage can somewhere because that was junk. And now we're picking up a different way of seeing the world than what we used to see before. And it's a much more pleasant way. It's a nicer place to be. Just kind of like that woman that Lee was just talking about, who's an art teacher. She has the fourth cone, whatever that is. I never heard of that until this morning. And she can see colors that we don't see. So what do you say? She's lying, but medically they found out she had another cone. I can't wait to ask my eye doctor about this and learn more about the whole idea of this. It's amazing. And we look at that and we say, that's amazing.
But I heard,
See all those colors in a leaf?
I,
Here,
And that's more interesting. I see green. Go ahead, Tom. Tell us more of the things we
here's
can see.
a different way maybe to look at time. Time is really what you call into your awareness. The present is what you choose to call into your awareness right now. The past is something that you want to be able to access at some time, but not in the present moment. So uh, whenever you look at the past, you're actually bringing information that you already have access to, that you've allowed yourself to access to, and you bring it into the present. The future is things that you do not want to have any ability to access at all. So depending on our choice of what we want to have access to, we call it either the past, the present, or the future. If you start living your life with the idea that now I'm going to predetermine my future, which aligns with the truth that you are as God created you, perfect, whole, and complete. And you start saying, I now am aware that my future is the realization and this oneness. Then you start having access to that future, and you start living not based on your past, but on what you are becoming. And now this is a process of reawakening to the truth that you've already uh, pre or been given access to, which is the truth that we are part of this oneness, that God didn't create any junk, that we're perfect, whole, and complete. A lot of time I talk about uh, your present not being, most people think their present is controlled by their past. What I want you to start thinking is that your present and your past is controlled by your future. You're a product of your future, and start seeing that future not as you being a worthless piece of junk, but as being God's beloved child with whom she is well pleased, and that we're moving towards that. So uh, just be aware that time is really what we're willing to access or say that we have access to today. But time, another definition of time, is it's the measure of change. And what we're doing is, rather than uh, having our past control us, now we're saying we're a product of our future, and now we know where we're going. And everything that happens today and in the past is needed so that I can get to my future. Uh, I'm set on if someone has some questions about that idea, concept. So it's a different way of looking at time. I'm
Mm-hmm.
a product of my future, and I know what that future is. As the Course says, as my inner self says, it knows of the oneness. It knows what your true spiritual magnificence is, and you are not the body. I am not a body. I am free. I am still as God created me. Nothing sources my experience but me. It's space and time, because this is a world of perception. And nothing can cause me to lose my inner peace unless I allow it. And that's what mind training and this course is trying to clean up our mind of all the crap that we've been indoctrinated into. This idea that we're uh, lack, limitation, separation, that we're a sinner, and start reawakening to the truth of our true spiritual magnificence. Thank you.
That's
Tom, that's beautiful.
amazing. That's amazing.
It's
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it's amazing because I was about to I was taking notes about everything that I'm hearing right now, and I was about to share my thoughts around time and space because yeah, and you gave me this part of my thought process that I never like realized. I mean, the information was there, but I never realized it because now you gave me that gift of information. Ever since I'm in this process with the Course in Miracles, I really had to. I mean, it's just that the symbols. I'm sorry, it's too many thoughts in one moment, so I have to lay them down. Um, when I started the process with the Course in Miracles, I started like seeing the meaning of many things differently, and then I found those things like new clues for my inner peace, new clues for the things that I needed to embrace within myself to get them forgiven and give my ego this sense of peace and I mean my ego respond to the information given me like a rest at ease. So I always, as I was yesterday sharing this, I always use my ego like a compass. Not I don't get frustrated about the things that I feel that I feel wrong, but instead of that I use that like a compass. This is pointed at something that I need to forgive. And one of the first like constructs in my mind about space and time was really the symbol of the cross, because our thought process within the duality, it's horizontal, right? It's a thought process that gives the idea of an horizontal line. So you're in the, I mean, you come from the past, you're in the present at the middle, and then the future at the other side of that line. And then you have, with this kind of learnings and with this exploration of spirituality, then you have a straight line to God, because in every single meditation technique that you can find in the world, they always used this thought process to get you rooted, like down below the center of the earth, and then you go up and seek in your imagination the highest power source that you can find. That it tends to be like always a construct, like everything is light, right? Because light is one of the biggest analogy of God that we can have here in this world. So it seems like when we are in duality, we are thinking horizontally, and when we are seeking God, we are in a thought process that it's vertical. So you have the cross, the symbol of the cross. Then you took that symbol within your body, and you see that your body as well connect those dots at the center of your heart. I mean, if you span your arms and you see yourself like a cross, the point where these two lines meet is your heart. And I took that reference, and oh my God, my mind started like to connect these dots, and then, oh my God, that's why the images of Jesus always shows like the light coming out from his heart. Because then when you maintain your practice and you do regularly the exercise of connecting vertically and at the level of the mind with something higher than yourself, it doesn't matter how you move in the horizontal thought process, even if it is between the past and present, because you're always reaching the now moment. So you no longer feel afraid of what you experienced in the past, because there's only gratitude in the past. And you will no longer feel anxious about the future, because what is in the future is only the final goal that everybody is trying to aim, that it's that we are all God's beloved child. And in that way, I just realized, because of what Tom has shared, that I have always been curious about why I could never see myself in the future. I mean, I had this, I mean, I have been saying this in other sessions, but this is a moment really for a new realization in my mind. And it's, when you are in different like workshops in your career, they always tell you like, well, you need to picture yourself. What are you going to do in 5 years from now? What are you going to do in 10 years from now? How do you see yourself? Whenever I was asked that question, even if it was younger or not or whatever, I had my mind like blank, like dark. I mean, I never could see myself what I'm going to do, because in the past I never had like a certainty of what I wanted to do. I mean, I did have like this passions of things, I mean, or some kind of talents that I want to explore, but I never got so like attached to them. And I just, because it's just that I never had like the certainty that I will be able to I don't know, go to college. I never was like certain about my own survival, if you think so. I never took care about what my life could be in front of me, because I have to take care of the moment. Every single day was like this survival thing for me, so I had to really took each day by itself. And that helped me to not be able to not, I mean, that helped me to not have that kind of perception of myself in the future, but I always questioned myself about that, and I was giving myself a hard time on that, because I said, well, if you don't know what you're going to do in 5 years, then how are you going to live your life? Because you are not planning, you are not taking care of things that are important, and everybody does, and you don't know what you're going to do with your life. And well, I always had that anxiety about my future, because I didn't know what my future was going to be. And now I know. I never knew what my future was going to be, because now I know that I was only seeking this experience of oneness. And it doesn't matter where that experience will come from, because that's where we all end up being in some point of our lives. So this part of the things that Tom has shared, the most important part for me right now is we are moving from in the future we all are going to end up being one, because where all began all will end. So we all going to be at one at some point, and we all God's beloved child. So I really feel at peace now that I never knew what was my future going to be. So it just gave me this moment, now I know why. Wonderful. I don't know. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah. And that's why in the present is the only way you can reach the source. If you stick with the present and with an objective observation of whatever conflict you have in your life, you will be able to expand the mind. Because if, for example, you're having an argument with somebody and you're bringing all the luggage that you had from the past and the hurts and things like that, you will always going to look for the opportunity to tell that person that you hurt me, then you did this to me, and you're not taking the moment, the specific things that is going on in the moment, and probably is not the best way to approach a conversation. So if you remain yourself in the now, what is going on now, it doesn't matter what happened in the past, now, what is going on? That person is mad. Okay, is mad at you really? You sure that person is mad at you? You are sure that person is judging you? Is that what it's saying? And then you really start to change your mind around it, because you're forcing yourself to stick with the facts. You stick with the facts and lose the past in order to be present in the conversation, and just let God guide your words and guide your approach into some kind of conflict that you are perceiving, because now we know that in the now is the only way you reach God. God has no past, and God knows no future. For God always is, if you have an horizontal line and you have a vertical line, the vertical line moves along every part of the of the horizontal line, and it will be there. It's just present every single time. So the eternal concept, it's in the now. It's not in the past, it's not in the future. You want to reach eternity? Be present. Stick with the facts. Mm-hmm. So stay in the now. Yeah. In the now, in the thought process. So it's amazing. I thought I wasn't paying so much attention to this, but I guess I found
you're doing
my
great
revelation here with Tom's sharing. Thank you, Tom, very much.
You're marinating in it every morning. How could you not? You're doing great.
That
Shelley.
led me to a question.
Oh, sure.
This is so good. I guess it's for Tom or Bob or whoever. And you kind of hit it on it a minute, but my question about time and looking at our topic today about God is in my mind, how do I or we supersede time to create new atmospheres in a sense? What is the meat of using, since God is in my mind, that time to create. You see it's like I'm taking where we mad from last night. I'm stuck in last night's anger, which means I'm still in the past, even though I have I can see God in everything. But what is the step to get from God is in my mind to transcend the atmosphere of my anger? I hope I hope you guys understand that question.
It totally makes
Absolutely,
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh
Are,
man.
Add, just
We have
add the
all been
word,
there.
now to the end of the workbook lesson. God is in everything I see because God is in my mind now, or today, or in this experience that's going on. God is in here. Another way of saying, I see the Christ in you, or all of those kinds of statements are all meant to get us into this present time. And if there is any way to visualize eternity, it's simply to say the now is eternity. If you were totally in the now, you would be totally in eternity. So within that, you can do almost anything. I say it that way because the miracles will abound. They will allow you to do things you never thought you could do. Living totally in the present is what meditators try to become. There's a little bit of a conflict there because if their eyes are closed and they're in the now, they're not really seeing with their eyes what's in front, but they are envisioning. They can envision what's going on. This, the way I look at it is exactly the way Tom is. I just use a different way of explaining it. That time is a dimension. All of the thoughts that are part of time, like yesterday's bad stuff, or even the fear of future's bad stuff, they're all playing around in this dimension of time. If I get into eternity, then I can see the past, the present, and the future in relationship to the thoughts going on. And when I can place God in that picture, then everything is going to be different the way I vision the world. This is an explosive lesson, and each one seems to be more explosive than the one before. So I think all of us, by virtue of doing it with this group of people that we have right now, and more people who will come as they're ready to look at things the way we're trying to bring to
Mm-hmm.
bring to everybody's awareness, these are things some of us have figured out. Now, this woman with the cones, she figured out stuff I never heard of. And I'm excited and I can't wait to tell my wife about it because, as Lee mentioned, Susie taught in
Sure.
college color theory. This
I got the
blows it
real deal
away.
for you here too. It's
Ah,
called
that's the
Can I jump
techrochromacy.
in a little bit because
Yeah.
I stick with the part of Dr. Natalie's question, how to move from anger to love if your mind is still, I mean, you have the theory in your mind of all of this, but it seems like in the practical thing of it, you are not moving forward within your experience. What I
Yeah.
have experienced myself is that when my ego doesn't let go anger, it's because he's trying or she's trying or whatever the ego is, it's trying to point something at me that I need to look better. So if you go back and review the situation that gives you this kind of discomfort, but objectively truly see what is going on. This person said this and that and behaved like this, and I didn't like it because this is what triggers me. You need to review like the entire circumstance or moment that triggers that anger in you. You need to review everything, like Sherlock Holmes. See around the entire situation. What happened really? What the people are doing? What were the objects around it? The subjects that they were talking. see clearly all the clues that you can find from that experience and try to find the point where you mostly felt tricked by. And that point is trying to teach you something that needs to be integrated within yourself, to be reversed in the thought. For example, when I use that experience that I told several times before, when I used my ego to really find out what was bothering me, because if you remember, there's a lesson before of these ones that says I'm never angry about the things that I think I'm angry. So what is what I'm angry really for? And then if you use that, you will find a powerful tool to move from fear to love, because anger is just fear something. So what are you afraid of that it's giving you this hard time and that you seem not to be able to apply your theory into the practice? So if you use this kind of dynamics within your mind, maybe probably you can force it to realize the part of this puzzle that you have never seen before with other eyes.
Yeah.
And it's like being in the now moment. And you can also as well have meditations and things like that. The meditation always helps, because the meditation is your mind and put the mindset in the now, in the moment. And that's where the inspiration will help you as well. But for my instance, that I don't have much time to meditate because I have a lot of things to do around the house and my kid doesn't let me meditate. I did use this kind of thought process to understand what is going on, Adriana, that you cannot let go this feeling, this awful feeling. I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to feel discomfort in my heart. I want to feel at ease, peace of mind. What is bothering me? So I have to go back and review that.
Here's a couple of things in regard to your question. You wake up the next, you had an argument, you wake up the next day and you're still in that argument. Couple of things. One is, if your peace is being disturbed, what we want to do is, and what we're trying to progress is to be able to recapture our inner peace in quicker and quicker gaps. So like we're in the process of learning how to maintain our inner peace. But if your inner peace is disturbed, that means that you're probably listening to your ego, and your ego, and there's that higher voice that this lesson talks about, or God, your conscious, whatever you want to call it. But the ego is arguing for your rightness. It's always going to argue for its rightness and its justification of why you feel that you've been wrong some way. So the question that you might want to ask is two things. Would I rather be right, or would I rather be happy? Or I'd rather use the word uh, instead of substitute happy, or would I rather have inner peace? Inner peace is to recover my inner peace, I need to forgive. Forgiveness, when we realize what the law of God is, to give is to receive. When I choose to keep someone a prisoner, otherwise I refuse to forgive them, what I have to do is I have to put them in the prison of my own mind, and then I have to guard, and in that same prison, I have to guard them so that they don't escape. So by withholding forgiveness, I am in the same prison that I'm trying to keep them in. If we realize that in reality, everything is happening within my own mind, we might also realize that those people, we want to pretend that they're in our prison, but they're long gone. They might be, their day may be peaceful and happy, or maybe they're doing the same thing that disrupted your inner peace with somebody else. But what we have to do is we have to realize that what's more important, my own desire to be right, which is the ego, or inner peace? And whenever I choose for inner peace, then I
Yes.
look and I say, uh, the only one that I'm really keeping in prison is myself, by keeping my past uh, and bringing it forward into the now. Uh, in my book, Ending Fear, the 7-Hour Formula for Fearless Awakening, there's a number of definitions as to what, how we define things. And let me just say, time is the dimension in which individuated consciousness appears to recognize that something has changed, that something may be a living thing, a non living thing, and an idea, an event, condition, or circumstance. The change may be in terms of growth, decay, evolution, integration, or other natural development that is in accord with the intention of the perceiver. Time is the measure of change. It is the belief that there's a gap between cause and effect. But I also have a definition for eternity. Okay. And once I go through this, open it up and, we can talk about it if you want. But eternity is the realization that this moment and forever are exactly the same. You are always free and clear from the past. The past has no consequence on what you choose to be aware of in the present moment. Therefore, there is neither past nor guilt to bind you. There is no separation that has ever occurred, and thus there is nothing in this moment that can dictate your future, since each moment
Mm-hmm.
is independent by itself. You rest in the perfect safety of God's unconditional love. You are totally free. If we, what I want to teach is exchanging time for eternity, to realize that you're always free from the past. The law of karma is that you're your own keeper of your own karmic keys. That means that if you refuse to forgive others, ultimately, when you say to give is to receive, you're refusing to forgive yourself for, perhaps, if we want to just look at it, for allowing yourself to be in that experience, for requiring that experience. And until you can forgive yourself, you'll continue to carry that past garbage in the form of some type of blame, shame, or guilt, depending on what stage it might be, blaming someone else, or ultimately realizing that you're responsible and it's your own fault for requiring that learning lesson. So you're the keeper of your own karmic keys, and
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness gives you the freedom to move out of that past. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the past never happened, but now you changed its purpose and you've learned the learning lesson that it provided. Whenever you have bad experiences, ask yourself this question, because it's always about yourself. What would I have to believe about myself to cause this to come into my awareness? Because we're always trying to learn things about ourselves. So the Holy Spirit, the intuition, is always giving us learning lessons. And if we realize that we're growing into the reawakening, the Course in Miracles says that we're not trying to change what you are. What we're really trying to do is to remove all the blocks, all the crap that's been put upon us that leads us to believe that somehow we lack, there's separation, and there's limitation, and that we are the body and the body is me. And we're removing those blocks, and then that spiritual magnificence will reappear. This idea that the body is just a costume that is, and I spoke before about the idea of an aura. We think that the aura is being generated by the body. The body is a costume that's blocking our true spiritual magnificence, and that aura that's surrounding the costume, the body, the mask is really being generated by what we truly are. So, anyways, if you have questions or seek, I didn't explain myself good.
Thanks, Tom.
Let me know.
It's wonderful, Tom. It's like
It
meditating.
is. You give so much information. It's amazing. There's lots of layers here, and we talk about all of these different things. If you can just hold on to the thread of one concept that you pick up here, it's going to be helpful. And so, if some of what we say makes sense, hang out long enough, and the rest of it will make sense too. We do try and stay with the fundamentals, but we're talking about stuff that my minister never talked about when I was growing up. And when I went to Catholic school, the priest never talked about any of this kind of stuff. And the nuns never talked about it. And it wasn't until I got past out of the daily, out of the regular churches and into kind of higher thought, trying to figure out how to refine myself and improve myself, 12-step programs, self-work, all of that kind of stuff has led me to this and made it really clear that this is a great path up the mountain for me. And I know it welcomes all the other paths up the mountain. And there's a lot of other ways of working with God and getting inspiration. So take this and use it as it's helpful. Tom brings in additional stuff too. Tom Wakechild, by the way, is the author of the book that I read from when I started. So it's a true blessing to kind of have him here for support. And when I'm reading in the morning, a lot of the words I'm reading his words to help kind of bring clarity to this stuff. So I'm really indebted to the amount of effort that he put in here. Dad and I have gone to other scholars with this work to seek out additional information as well. There's a guy named Robert Perry that we pull from, and a bunch of history. But everything that you guys bring when you come and you share and you ask helps make it deeper for us. And I really appreciate that. So with that, I'm going to say, welcome, Louisa. We're getting to the top of the 8 o'clock hour here. Hope you're staying warm. Everybody
Oh
down
my
below,
God,
thank you
I just
guys.
forgot.
It's wonderful to see you guys. And
That's
Yeah.
anybody
that's
who
why
wants
we
to
have the
share, let me
replays.
know.
I
It's
like to
okay.
share.
Sure.
Michelle,
Hello. I just want to say this is just so phenomenal. I feel like I'm sitting at the feet of the gods. Um, so much
Oh, I hope you're
valuable
not talking about
information.
us. We're
Yes,
Rem-
I
sitting at the
am.
feet too. We're definitely at the
we
feet
are
with
you,
you.
remember. We are you. We are you.
And Lee, thank you for what you sent. I'll check that out today. Um, just in gratitude about all of this. And I do have a question for Tom. Well, actually, two questions. Just looking at my note. You said, oh God, where did I put it? To ask yourself the question, what would I have to believe about myself? And then I didn't hear what you said after that, what that question was. And the second question is, which I asked Lee before, but I'll ask you since you're here. Which book would you recommend for a beginner to get first out of
Oh,
Course
that's a
in
great
Miracles for
question.
Dummies?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. It's a great question. I really feel like Tom's book is super helpful after you kind of, well, you know what? Let me state that a different way. For me, what worked best for me, I started out by reading some books from Marianne Williamson to kind of get some of the concepts down. Once I realized non-duality and the difference between non-duality and the world that we live our day in, then the course made a lot more sense to me, and Tom's book made a lot more sense to me. And so I think there's value there. All of these books are available online. The Course in Miracles, it's all there online for free. The whole book, the Foundation for Inner Peace version. The purple version that we use is a newer version of this book produced by a new group, and so it's not quite as accessible as Tom's book, but you can find it. You're looking for the Circle of Atonement edition, and it's the one with about an extra 50,000 words that were recovered. Tom's is based on the primary text that we all really started with, this blue book. And so it was extremely helpful because we were all coming from a place, and I'll definitely let you jump in, Tom, if you want to explain it better than I'm able to, but it gives us a perspective of where we spent the last 50 years before this purple book came out. And it really was a big, decoder ring for me. And so I'm kind of recommending both of them depending on where you're at. My gut instinct is that Tom's book could be really helpful for you, and that the purple book has extra stuff for you maybe after Tom's book has served its purpose. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. And I'm just saying, because when I went to the bookstore to look up the book, Tom's book, there's so many different versions of the book.
It's Course in Miracles for Dummies. And actually it's 3 volumes, but yeah, at least in paperback. Ebook, it's just 2. It's the text and then the workbook. We're reading mostly from the workbook. The text is somewhat in similar format. After each paragraph, then there's some explanatory note on the passage itself. But so it's Course in Miracles for Dummies. It'd be on Amazon or whatever that you want.
I
To
definitely find
answer
the
your
digital versions
question,
helpful
the
too.
first question was what would I have to believe about myself to require or to cause that experience to come into my awareness? Now that's a question to ask, because what you're really trying to do is you're trying to uncover some belief, and a lot of times the belief is on an unconscious basis. We don't realize. We think that I have this idea that I'm incompetent, but really the core belief might be that I'm a sinner, that I have to do some type of penance. So that's just a question to ask. What would I have to believe about myself to call that into my awareness? Because what we're really trying to do is we're trying to decipher the learning lesson. Okay, so that would be the first thing. If you, in regards to your second question, here's just something that I would throw out. You could go to my website. It's understandingacim.org, or I prefer the parent one is endingfear.org. Go to that website. There's a class that I have on there. That's like $47, but you can take a test drive of it, and it's called Decoding A Course in Miracles. Okay, I always encourage, and there's some study plans in there too, but Decoding A Course in Miracles. What that does is that takes the major principles or ideas of the Course in Miracles and explains them in simple layman terms. Okay, and so what it will do, it'll try and explain why evil exists, why these various things. So it's something that you could take, you could go over, and if you want, you could just test drive it.
I just put the link
for a
up
bit,
top
but
too.
that would
You can
help.
just tap on that.
Okay.
Just
And
terrific.
then the
Thank
other
you.
thing that I would really encourage everybody to do is to do the workbook lessons. Do the workbook lessons, because the workbook lessons of trying to give you a personal experience of the results, and trying to get the results to you, whether or not you understand all the theory behind it. The ACIM Workbook for Dummies gives you a lot of the background, and it also brings modern science into this thing and explains how things work. But if you wanted to do anything and you wanted to understand A Course in Miracles, and you can get the ACIM for understand Course in Miracles for Dummies version. That would certainly make the text a lot more understandable and put you on a equal or superior level than most of your people that you're talking to. okay, including a lot of teachers. But so that would give you a good start. But uh, look at that decoding A Course in Miracles. If you're someone that's not necessarily tied into A Course in Miracles and you want to uh, help learn the principles of A Course in Miracles, uh, get Ending Fear, the 7-hour formula for fearless awakening, because that will start telling you and it approaches it a little differently. It approaches it from science, the same principles as ACIM, but it gives you scientific research and what scientists are telling us so that you have an increase in believability of these concepts that you truly are spirit, that you will exist with or without the body. And so it's designed for the general public, not core ACIM students, but it'll put you on the road to start seeing this world better so that you can start living without fear or starting to learn to better control and manage fear. So that's plenty of that. But ask that question whenever you have negative experiences and positive experiences too. You should always ask yourself, what would I have to believe about myself to call that into my awareness? Because it's always about your own beliefs on a conscious or subconscious level. And what we want to do, and why I say we want to start realizing our true identity and start reclaiming our future. Uh, your future is that there's never been anything wrong with you. You're always perfect, whole, and complete. You just don't believe that. And that's the crap that we want to get rid of. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. That was great. I had a couple of questions about
Oh,
some terms that
thank
we
you.
use. Yes, thank you. I'm so sorry. I appreciate that, Michelle, for you bringing that up. Each of these kinds of things are layers, and I realize that we're presenting a bunch of stuff. So there were a
And
couple
I'll
of terms that I
add something, but I'll
can.
wait till you're finished, Lee.
Okay, this will only take a half a second. A couple of terms that are really important. We've talked about forgiveness, we've talked about atonement, and a couple of other things. And just to backtrack a little bit and make those couple of things clear, when we're using the word atonement here, it's a little bit different than maybe the one that you're used to using. Atonement might be a way of asking for forgiveness, an act of contrition, or a way of uh, not just trying to make amends, but repay a debt and kind of make complete amends, you might say. But in this case, atonement is a lot of times used as the more Old English kind of definition, and it's an at one ment. It's a oneness with God, and this definition we found um, in the Oxford English Dictionary, and that's how I found out that it was actually an older definition that I wasn't even familiar with before. But it really has a lot more to do with, in this case, Christian mysticism in general. That peace of God that comes when you realize, oh, there is a peace of God within me. I am a piece of God. Actually, my totality is a piece of God. And so, therefore, I can act as if, and I will receive the messages that guide me. And so, um, that was just two quick things. Thanks for letting me jump in there. Please go ahead and finish your comment, though.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Wow, so many nuggets. Tom, you just really, this morning, uh, there was a shift in me as you were speaking about the future. And you're talking about time, and just so many things came up. I was trying to take notes as things were coming up that I wanted to share. It's just trying to put everything together. But I've noticed that with me, it's like I'm chipping away at my ego. My ego is putting up a good fight, and as things come up, um, there these issues are dissolving much more quickly. There's a friend of mine. There was a conflict going on, and a lot of it was through text because I couldn't speak to this person, and So there was a lot going on in my mind. And, as I'm walking around, I'm carrying these things in my mind. And I'm able to ask myself, well, what is it? What's bothering you right now in this moment? And of course, I get answers. Well, this and this and that. Well, why is that a problem? And so last night I was able to speak to my friend, and instantly, um, being in the present with my friend and hearing the voice in my ear and just being still in that moment, I just felt love. It was so good to hear my friend's voice, and we both felt the same thing because we were just kind of, after we said hello, it was like, whoa, wow, it's you, this person I love, and all this stuff dissolved in the moment. And like some of what you were reading, Tom, I there were things within it that I kind of wanted to bring up, and also to answer Dr. Natalie. Also, um, I was looking for how to heal things in the present, things like anger and all these different things. And as I was doing some research, a simple mantra, a simple statement came up twice in a book I was looking up, and then also I think it was a video I was listening to, and it's just saying a simple statement of that was then, this is now. Just allowed me to just drop everything, and being in that present moment, and just recognizing there are no problems here. There's really nothing going on usually when you look at the present moment. And I just found quicker healing now. And we all actually have, and I don't have a lot of, Tom is great with, he's got great references and all this. And for me, um, my intuition has been much more sharp, because as my mind clears, it's almost like doing these exercises and all of this studying. It's like it peels back this onion, and my mind just starts to feeling clear, like I have a clearance. I think it was like Eckhart Tolle who talks about how he said he doesn't think at all, like he has no thoughts most of the time, except there things come up. And I'm getting this feeling of a clearance, of an internal peace now. And I think it allows the Holy Spirit to talk to me um, more, clearly. This atonement you were just talking about, Lee, this oneness with God that we all have. Um, when we ask a question, we'll get guidance. And for me, it's a still small voice or a feeling about something, a truth about something. When I become introspective, when I'm struggling with something, and I get the answer much more quickly now, because I have this peace within. Um, and it was to the point where I guess it was a couple days ago, and I was just going along, and I didn't need YouTube, I didn't need television, I didn't need anything, and I was just this peace, and I was happy with the peace. And then my ego popped up because it became fearful. Like, oh, you have nothing to chew on. What's wrong? Something must be wrong. What is this? Because, there was a time when my mind was constantly going, 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 going. And now I have much more peace in my mind. And because I'm very much moving into being in the present more often, and I'm able to be in that was then, this is now. And I could just drop things um, as so-called issues come up. And the whole thing about, Tom, you were talking about I guess the kind of the eternity, or there's an idea that we can actually heal the past. And personally, I've practiced doing that in my life by examining things in my mind, that because it's only our minds that has perceptions about things that have happened to us. And to heal it, I would revisit something, way in my past. And I'd say, well, no, what about this and this?
and I pull out of it, for example, my marriage. I choose to see the beauty in my marriage. Um, I started, instead of pulling up trauma or things that I perceived as trauma, I pull up beautiful images. Like when we shared the birth of our daughter, I mean, that moment in my mind is just so beautiful and powerful. Why would you not think about that with your ex instead of we want to pull up this person did this, that, and the other that we perceive that hurt us? Bring up the beauty, and we can transcend time that way and heal it and heal ourselves that way. Um, so that's for me and my personal way of doing things, knowing that there's a living God, and we all have access to Christ consciousness at any moment. And when we know that and we tap into it, we can heal, and we can then move into, you're talking about moving into the present, to the future, and creating our future, and knowing the future is done, especially when you see it in the light of, um, you're moving into that space. And I love what you said, Tom. I might wanted to write what you said. It was some way you said of moving into your future, as opposed to, you might have to requote that, Tom. I would appreciate it because I love that statement. It was just so great for me. Um, but that's my share for the moment. Thank you.
Hi.
And I
Um,
hope that made sense. I was kind of all over the map, I felt like.
no, you did make sense, and I think everybody probably is, if I can just assume this, is probably also just full of different thoughts that come from the things that Tom said. And let me make the following point. The first question of several people was, okay, what do I do now? And the answer to that is it doesn't really matter which book you start with, which book you end with. It's all part of the new emerging you. And the easiest way to get to an answer for yourself is, what do I have right now that is in line with this new way of thinking? What I love about what Lee brought up about the cones, that this woman, she's got 4 cones, the rest of us have only 3 color cones in their eyes. She can see things that none of us can see. Okay, let's leave that on. That's fact number 1. But the thing she's seeing is still physical things. She has a special ability that's in her mind that also is manifested physically in her eyes, that enables her to see things that no one else has been able to see. They've always been there. If she could see them, they've always been there. So every one of us has a slightly different pathway up, but now it's kind of like we've got a 20-lane highway, and we can all get on that highway and move a little quicker towards the piece, to going from pieces, broken up into pieces, to real peace. This actually is just what every seer has always offered us, if we could get into one of those lanes. But not everyone knew where that highway was. What we're saying is that Course in Miracles, because Tom has written about Course in Miracles, even though his background prior to that was mysticism in general, he is bringing these ideas to bear so that it makes the 20-lane highway even more easy to understand. So you don't have to change lanes too many times, okay? Now, if we now know that in this physical world that we observe with our eyes, even though we can only see 100 million colors, we can only see 1 million colors. Now we find out there's 100 million colors. Okay, I want more of that. So at that point, we switch back to the spirituality paradigm. The spirituality way of looking at things is, we have the all that we need right now within us to see anything that we choose to see. We can see peace or we can see chaos. We can see love or we can see hate. How can we do that? Do we have that extra cone like that woman who can see the different colors, the expanded rainbow? Yes, and that's called the Holy Spirit. It's that simple. Every single one of us has the Holy Spirit within us. It's the extra cone, if you will. It's the ability in our minds that we were born with and we will have after our body is in the ground, and we still have the same spiritual mind, that spiritual presence, that ability to always see peace where we thought it was hate, or we thought everything was all crazy and broken up. We can see the bigger picture. And in the end, it all has to do with our point of view. Which point of view are we going to carry? And it's kind of like all the astrophysicists who are looking through telescopes and they're looking for this truth and that truth. The only truth that means anything to me is the peace that's in my mind. And the more I live with that awareness, knowing that I can move to that point of view instead of my ego's point of view, I can change everything in front of me. To that end, I'll also tell you that some of you have known that I've been working with a country called Liberia, but I'm here in the United States. That's just fine, everybody. I just found out last night I'm going to Liberia this week, or either at the end of this week or towards the beginning of next week. And that's really exciting and probably very scary to almost anybody who contemplates that, what about this? What about that? You have to do this, you have to do that. No, it's really very simple. I know that I have the protection of God. As Tom said, I love the metaphor of we are the keeper of the keys to our own prison. And we can let ourselves out anytime we want. So that's what this piece was about. Thank you.
That is amazing. What I'm taking out of all of this conversation, beautiful conversation, is that we always are in the present. I mean, we are now in the now. So in the now, we need to stick with the facts, to remain in the now, to look only for the content over the form and learn our lessons, to correct our thoughts of a past full of fear where there's only gratitude to be achieved. And once you can see your past as only gratitude for the experiences that you had, then you can move forward with the idea that you are aiming for a future where you can only experience to be God's beloved child, because that's our main goal for everyone. I mean, this is where we are all going, to be God's beloved child. So it's beautiful to have you all here. I'm really, really amazed how these lessons are becoming like more exciting every time. And as Bob yesterday at night received this kind of guidance that he will be in Liberia, last night I did found my way, and I'm gonna be in the U.S. and I'm gonna meet one of these two guys that is in the U.S. and I'm thrilled about it because it's our way to be more at one. So it's wonderful, and I'm really blessed to have this experience with you all, and I hope you all have this wonderful experience in your life as well by doing the lessons, because as Tom is always saying to us, the thing is not just grabbing the theory and trying to understand like the codes or things like that, because the world is not meant for be fixed. The world is just a learning lesson, and if you don't do the lessons and get yourself out of your comfort zone for a little bit, you will miss the experience of this oneness that we are searching for in our lives. So I really, really, I'm really glad today. I'm really happy today. And I know that Bob Adventure will bring us a lot of new excitement in our sessions as well. So I'm looking forward for his trip.
All right.
I think it's like, I'll
Michael?
just add one more last piece, Lee. This is lesson 30. There are 365 lessons. That means there are 335 lessons to go. For me, Tom's talk this morning was kind of like saying to someone who is to a kid walking down the street, saying, "Hey, kid, here is the door is open. It's 9 o'clock or whatever. This door to my candy store is open now, and we walk into this candy store, which is like 2 acres wide, and there's all kinds of stuff here. And this is just the beginning. I know that my wife, for example, Susie, does not like to go to Costco or those big box stores where it's so big, there's too many things to contemplate. She just wants to go to a store that she knows where everything is, and that is the way she likes, that gives her peace. But folks, Tom and I and everybody here, we're all here to say we have all seen a lot of these pieces that are in here. Here's the entire store. It's all here for you. This is but lesson 30. Stick with these lessons. And let's be back here at 6:30 tomorrow morning.
I guess
so that we can
Michael wanted
start
to
again.
talk. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I guess Michael wanted to talk. It was Michael. Hi, Michael.
I know I brought him up.
Okay. I did
Hey,
as well. Sorry.
just wanted to catch what I missed the beginning. What was lesson 30? If you could just read the first line, just so I know.
I can read the whole thing for you. I was just getting ready to read the whole thing right over. No problem at all.
Oh, perfect.
We cover it a couple of times at the beginning and a couple of times at the end. And if we can keep our comments a little bit more brief, we can have a lot more people share. So let's focus up on a single subject as much as we can when we share, and then we'll be able to have a lot more people contribute. Okay. God is in everything I see because God is in my mind. The idea for today is the springboard for vision. From this idea, will the world open up before you, and you will look upon it and see in it what you have never seen before, nor will what you saw before be even faintly visible to you. Today, we're trying to use a new kind of projection. We're not attempting to get rid of what we don't like in our minds by seeing it outside. Instead, we're trying to see in the world what's in our minds and what we want to recognize is there. Thus, we're trying to join with what we see rather than keeping it apart from us. That is the fundamental difference between vision and the way you see with your eyeballs. Today's idea should be applied as often as possible throughout the day, whenever you have a moment or so. Repeat it to yourself slowly. God's in everything I see because God's in my mind. Look around you and try to realize that it applies to everything you see now or could see if it were within the range of your sight. So not just your eyes, but everything you've ever thought of, everything you ever saw, everything you will see. Real vision is not limited by concepts such as near and far. To help yourself begin to get used to this idea, try to think of things beyond your present range. as well as those you can actually see as you apply today's idea. Real vision is not only unlimited by space and distance, but it doesn't depend on the body's eyes at all. The mind is its only source. To aid helping yourself to become more accustomed to this idea as well, devote several practice periods to applying today's idea with your eyes closed, using whatever subjects come to mind, and looking within rather than without. Today's idea applies equally to both. So I'll take us all through a quick session. Let's take just 2 minutes like we do in the mornings. Today, however often you want to send the reminders are good enough. We're trying to keep this thought in our mind as many times as possible. So you may want to tie a string around your finger to kind of have a continual reminder, something like that. Rubber band around your wrist, whatever works for you. So let's just take a moment. We're going to look within. We're going to look without. And the phrase is, God is in everything I see, because God is in my mind. Apply that thought now for yourself. Now either shift within or open your eyes and shift without. Take in everything, because God is in everything I see, because God is in my mind. Now close your eyes and look inside. Your thoughts. God is in everything you see in your thoughts, because God is in your mind. Now have some gratitude for the things you see. God is in everything I see, because God is in my mind. Thoughts that bring gratitude help us learn and transition to God's vision. Great job. God is in everything I see, because God is in our mind, my mind. Let's keep that thought with us today. We'll send out some reminders. We'll have the replay available. Tomorrow we'll be here about 2 hours earlier than right now, 6:30 in the morning, to go into lesson 31, the last one of January.
I have a quick example I wanted to share. Do we have time for that?
Absolutely. We've got all the time in the world.
Monday, my friend. Go ahead.
I love the part about thinking of things beyond your present range, which is, I guess, just visioning. One thing I wanted, had the vision of, I have the vision of my entire home, excuse me, being organized. Just I could envision all the shelves, all my office, the cups and plates, everything with this place, and just having a really beautifully organized home, because I realize I'm very attracted to that. Like when I see it, it gives me a sense of peace. I just love organization, but I haven't been, up until now, the most organized person. So this is something I just held in my mind, and just continuing to see my home organized as I walk through, even during the day, just envisioning that. And so I have a shed, and it's probably like a couple months ago now, and I had my patio set was out, and I have a handyman. And I had asked him, my son was off at work, so he couldn't help. And I wanted to put this patio set into my shed. And I asked if he would help me do it. And he said, sure, he'd help me do it. He was here doing some other things. And so to get it in there, I had to pull out some things and move things around and all this. And he's patiently watching me. And he said, I can do that. He says, I could organize all that for you. And I thought, you can? He's like, sure, I could do that.
That's a
And
blessing.
it is a blessing. And so I just stood back and let him do it. And while he was doing that, I was able to do some gardening and cleaning up of the yard and everything. And he did the most beautiful job of organizing my shed. I mean, it looks better than I could have done. And it's funny when you put something out there, the universe conspires with you to get it done. And then the next thing was, more recently, I thought, well, he did that with the shed. Maybe he could do that with the garage. And so I did the same thing. I asked him, well, since you did that with the shed, can you do that with the garage? And he's like, oh, sure. And he's so reasonable. He hardly charged me anything. And everything has its
That's
place.
wonderful.
And it excited me so much.
Oh my gosh,
And
that's great. A place for everything and everything in its place. That was my great grandmother's phrase.
I love
So,
that. And then
yeah.
since then, my office, and it's just unfolding. It's unfolding as I'm going through my home. It's getting more and more organized, and it almost seems like my family members are in on it because they're suddenly more often picking up and doing the dishes. And so truly,
Everybody's raising up. Yes. Love it.
yes. And my office was absolutely crazy, and that really overwhelmed me because that was really about me. It was very personal, and it's my business and it has to be organized. So, but I was overwhelmed about it. And I asked for guidance and just said, you know what, I'm just going to walk in there. And Spirit said, all right, you're just going to take one piece of paper at a time and look at it. And I thought, okay, I can do that.
It's the only
And
way to do it, too.
it's
You
the only
really
way
only
to
can
do
do
it.
it one at a time.
That's the only way to do it. And I made myself, sorry, I'm going to make myself comfortable. The room's a little cold, so I got a space heater. I got my candle. Long story short, I just sat there in presence. I was very present with each piece of paper. And I stood up at one point and it was like, kind of like this meeting, like when we started at 6:30 and now we look up, it's 8:30. It was that kind of feeling like, whew, like, wow, all that just happened. And so, yeah, it's a very real thing, the visioning. And I love to vision and do. And I think that was just an example of this lesson.
I love that, Janine, because we can also go to the Holy Spirit within us and say, please organize this mind for me so that I can see things more clearly, more peacefully, more lovingly, and get rid of all that other stuff. You can throw that away. Give it to the trash container. And anybody else wants to do some dumpster diving, they can have it. I want peace above
Yes.
all else. So
Peace.
I'm in a great place. Thank you.
Wonderful sharing, Janine. It's wonderful. We have to be certain that the future is just to be God's beloved child, and that's for sure. So the past is only gratitude, and the present is just the now, the eternity, in the now with God. So I think, not Dr. Natalie, do you want to share something? I see your mic is off, is on.
I am just breathing in this piece right now. I've been listening. I
Lovely.
am having a tangible moment right now, guys. It's like,
Nice.
whoa! I can't. It's. I think in my mind, I heard when you redid the lesson that God is in my mind. It just hit me that wow, I already have the peace. All I need to do is see at this very moment, I have everything I need. At this moment, I have my coffee, I have the strength, and it created y'all know I see the outside stuff, the lights, but I see it in me. Oh, and it's so joyous, this joy, this peace. I can actually work. I can actually just get up and maybe jog a mile or something. Good gosh. It's amazing to be at this place internally. It's amazing. It's amazing. So I'm just basking. I'm sorry guys. I'm tongue
Oh, but
twisted.
that is
I'm just
great.
whoa.
You're always looking for, seek and you shall find, and that's your question, and now you've been answered. You did it both. You did both of them.
Basking is great.
Yeah, it is. I especially love Baskin Robbins. Um, we had so much snow yesterday. We made snow cones. We had we had every different kind of frozen confection we could come up with based on what we had. So I hope you all are having a blessed day. Thank you for jumping around. All these different topics are just a great way to kind of blend it all together. I know Michael would want to say something. Shelly Legit down there had wanted to say something at one point too. So you all are welcome to share. If it's still there, we'd love to hear it. And no matter what, I'm grateful for you guys being here. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lee, and thanks for all you do with organizing all the technology and being here every morning, you guys.
Piece
Just
of
really
cake.
grateful to you.
It's a piece of cake. And I got to tell you, it's not just me. The support from everybody else has been really, really helpful. So I'm definitely there, but I also just kind of feel like I'm here to sweep up too. So um, I have gone through all the pieces that I usually go through, and we are in overtime from my perspective. We've done everything we need to do. So we're wide open to be here as long as you guys want, and we can hold this space. And so if other things come up as we're thinking about this lesson, or really A Course in Miracles in general, feel free to go ahead and ask. If you have questions, there was one other thing that had come up as a question that I wanted to address. Somebody who's a Buddhist asked me whether or not Course in Miracles works with somebody who is a Buddhist. And I think it works with not just Buddhism, I think it actually works with just about every religion. Every religion that I've ever heard of has some aspect that is seen here. And this can give you another view of how to look at God and how to choose the God of your understanding to be one that can be really helpful for you, helpful in solving practical problems in your lives and getting to a point where God is a solution provider and your brain is aligned with that solution and you're ready, willing, and able to take that influence and let God breathe through you and accomplish things through you. And so thank you all for being here with me and giving me a chance to say the stuff that I probably need to hear. I hope you all have a wonderful day. I'll be here to hold the space, but I'm going to leave the voice up to you guys for a while.
Oh, yeah, because I'm usually never ready to leave when everybody is. Yeah. And yesterday, Janine and I, and Michelle and I, we had a room to explore more. Janine inspired me to create a room. It wasn't my creation, it was her creation, but I just assisted with it. And I invited some of you, and all of you, of course, are invited. And the room name is That Was Then, This Is Now.
Oh, that's great.
Great.
And then I heard Adriana say the same words here. And so it was really heard, it was really received. And yeah, and then so Janine, I couldn't figure out how to make her the moderator, but I shared with her what I wanted to do, and she's interested in exploring more in this room too, with more beyond this room, even if someone's not ready or whatever
Got
the creation. But I love this room, and I don't ever want to leave it. It's true, and I'm not going to.
Well, we'll hold it open today. No problem. You may be a moderator by tapping their little avatar, their little face, and then you get the options to do stuff like that. We all had to figure that stuff out when we started too, so it's okay, no problem.
Oh, but is there a way to, when it was created, to do that though?
Yes, there. The way I do it is I have to go into the calendar part of the app and I set up all the people that will start out on the stage when they enter, rather than going into the audience down below. And so first you have to bring them up to the stage, and then after you've brought them up to the stage, then you can make them a moderator. It's kind of a two-step process. The person has to be at least on the stage before you can allow them to moderate. And so that's the thing that's like got you most of the time. And if it's not that, then there's a couple of other things that might go wrong. The ad hoc rooms are a little bit different than the ones that made in the calendar, blah, 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 blah. Anyway,
Yeah, but
I can figure it out next time if you want.
yeah, that makes sense, because I remember people have opened rooms without asking, which is fine, because you can, if you don't want to be in it as a moderator or whatever, you can always opt out. But I've noticed that people have opened rooms and made me. I'm like, wait, that's not my room I created, but I look like the creator. It looked like my room because they did that somehow.
Yeah, when you
So
create it, you get the first moderator badge. And then from that point forward, anybody you give moderator badge, you can't really tell who made it and whose responsibility it is. It's kind of a simplistic version of, you know what, I'm getting into the weeds, into the details. We don't care about that stuff. Let's go back to the workbook lesson. The
yeah.
space here is a good example of a metaverse type space, though. I want you all to realize that when we exist with just our voices and a simple avatar or picture, we are really inhabiting the idea of a space that's not necessarily aligned with our physical presence. It gives us a chance to exist any time of day, come back and listen to these again, and they're all recorded, hopefully for your benefit. And I'm hopeful that this continues to multiply the effects that this has had in my life. I've been growing with this thing for 6 years, 7 years, intensely, and before that, it was a good 15 years worth of just getting myself ready to be able to understand it. So, and probably a whole life worth of getting ready to understand it. But I'm grateful I'm here where I'm at today and the lessons that got me to this point. I'm grateful for the rest of this year and the rest of the growth that I think is going to happen based on what's happened in January. It feels like finally 2020 is over. It won't be 2022 like TOO. It'll just be TWO.
Lee, I have a question for you. What would happen if, let's just say, Janine and
Andy and Michelle.
Dr. Natalie wanted to have another room and wanted to replay this 2 hours, or you can not only replay it, but I think you can also kind of move halfway through it or something like that. Would that be possible? And could that actually be, let's just another room that simply replay it and then discuss it? I'm just thinking.
I'm fully through the mill for teachers for all of us and different sources, being able to couple
I have
different.
so many materials, and I'm
I know it's
just
there's new books and now there's this new one.
Look at that person doesn't be it can't be like a text. It's all volume 2, 31. If you got the ebook, the text in one ebook workbook, its own separate. There's a little extra. Are you looking at paper? Would be the Miracle for Dummies, and one the base is working from, and that's just the 300. So you just really have 2 ebooks that you really need to do text. It's called the Miracle Dummy, and then the workbook is.
Make this in anyone's want to intro or core in our book.
Hey,
Okay.
guys, welcome.
Hi, love this group. It's I shared a friend of mine, but when I know so good, I'm not the for me. How do I try and get those? Because
No problem.
morning coffee. So
No, why we're
now
doing
I'm sitting
multiple.
out. I say I don't have a pen and don't have a glass.
It's
Super
okay.
awesome.
That's okay. We're here every morning at 6:30, and you can ask more later on any other.
Perfect.
So
I
no
just love
rush. None of this
this.
is going anywhere. And we do have. I use all the and they phenomenally well in terms of having what you need wherever you need it.
Oh, I just love it. Do I have a minute? Kind of just tell who because I want to quickly.
From